Some, like the Creagers from New Jersey, it takes just one panel to understand the pain. Their sons.
How did you feel when you first saw it?
Emotional. We were proud of him. We are proud of him. He was a great person.
New panels keep coming. 4,000 are expected this weekend. And yet, Quilt co-founder Cleve Jones imagines the day when the quilt will stop growing.
My hope, my dream.
Johnson is the guy who's going to do it. He is a special player. Turned down Michigan to go to Purdue when Ty Wheatley went to Michigan, and he's going to get
over the medical use of marijuana in California.
Plus, is the world ready to call Madonna mom? And breaking baseball's rules, whatever happened to good old-fashioned sportsmanlike conduct? This weekend, hundreds of thousands are gathering in Washington, D.C. for a series of events to commemorate the lives of the 340,000 Americans who have died of AIDS. At the center of the events is a display of the giant AIDS names quilt, which spans a mile. It's just incredible.
It really is quite a memorial to their memories. And we're going to be talking about that in the first half hour of our program today. As well, we'll be introducing you to some wonderful people who are bringing comfort to the youngest people living with AIDS. But first, let's go straight to Washington. Willow?
Thanks, Kevin. Well, memories and a message. Those are the key ingredients in the AIDS demonstrations this weekend. Many have come to grieve for loved ones and strangers who have died from the disease. Organizers hope the events will refocus the nation's attention on the continuing search for a cure. Here's ABC's Deborah Weiner.
It is one powerful image after the next. Last night in Washington, thousands participated in a candlelight vigil to remember those lost to AIDS.
For as long as you don't forget, more than 300,000 Americans will not have died in vain.
Their message is well-timed, less than 4 weeks before the election. And their message is clear: more money for research, more money for drug assistance programs.
Our political leadership is still squeamish. They're behind the times. They got to get with the program, and then we can win.
There is little that is subtle about this weekend in Washington.
Frank Broderick, Randy Schultz, Gary Walsh.
Names of the dead were read continuously. It is hard to be subtle when this is the scale. Nearly 40,000 panels of the AIDS memorial quilt. So many, the quilt spills over the mall.
This could be the last full display of the quilt. It is simply too big and growing too fast. Stretching 24 football fields, it is expected to double in size in 4 years.
And yet the quilt represents just 11% of all AIDS deaths in the U.S.
Years ago, we really didn't have to think about anything like this, but now we do.
Each quilt here is taking people hours and hours to make, and all the love that's gone into everything here. It's amazing.
For some, like the Creagers from New Jersey, it takes just one panel to understand the pain. Their sons.
How did you feel when you first saw it?
Emotional. We were proud of him. We are proud of him. He was a great person.
New panels keep coming. 4,000 are expected this weekend. And yet, Quilt co-founder Cleve Jones imagines the day when the quilt will stop growing.
My hope, my dream, and a dream I think is going to come true is I'm going to be here when we sew the last quilt in.
Deborah Weiner, ABC News, Washington.
And joining us this morning from the mall in Washington is Mike Smith, co-founder of the Names Project. Good morning, Mike.
Good morning.
Explain to us, if you will, what will happen later on this morning?
Teams of 8 groups of 150 to 1,200 people will be needed later this morning to open up each of the sections of the AIDS memorial quilt all the way down the mall.
And there are how many sections?
There are nearly 39,000 panels in the quilt displayed here, plus another 2,500 that have come in as new panels just in the last 2 days.
That is quite extraordinary. Now, originally, the quilt was designed as a memorial to those who have died from the disease. But as the quilt has aged and as it has grown so rapidly, has its role changed?
A lot of things have changed. We really began as a small project in San Francisco. The quilt was a community event, a way to tell the rest of the world what we were going through in San Francisco with so many of our friends and neighbors dying. That's all changed now in the fact that the rest of the country has joined us. And the Names Project now really represents people from all walks of life, from every city and town. And the quilt is a memorial, but it's also useful in education and prevention. It helps people understand that AIDS is something that can affect them.
Now, we just heard Cleve Jones, the co-founder of the project, say in the news piece before this that our political leadership is still squeamish. Yet this year, for the first time, our president is involved, and President and Mrs. Clinton are co-chairing the display. How significant is that?
For many of us in the Names Project, we have waited 9 years for a President of the United States to finally walk through the quilt. The quilt is an incredibly open, non-threatening, emotional experience. It's a wonderful way to discover how the country is responding to AIDS. We've offered this opportunity to every president over the last 9 years, and finally we have a president that has taken a walk on the quilt and seen for himself that this is an epidemic affecting people from all walks of life in Middle America.
Is this the last time that the quilt in its entirety will be displayed?
Every time we do this, the display seems just barely big enough to manage, and each time we say we don't think we can do this again. But we are committed to continuing to display the quilt as long as there's a need. As long as there's still bigotry and stigma around this disease, we'll be here. Whether it's the whole quilt again or not, I don't know, but we will continue to be here as a reminder of the human toll of this epidemic.
Mike Smith, thank you very much for joining us this morning. We appreciate it. Kevin?
Okay, well, let's check other news now. Washington was host to another group of demonstrators yesterday. About 30,000 Hispanic Americans marched through the Capitol, demanding a $7 minimum wage and simpler procedures for becoming a U.S. citizen. The event was billed as the first national march for Latinos.